Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for Tap Into Your Pre-Health Advisor today for a successful tomorrow. My name is Elizabeth Wright, and I manage the Go Dental initiative here at ADIA. So first, I want to take just a moment to extend a very special welcome to our three lovely panelists, Carol Baffy-Dugan from Tufts University, Francisco Castellan from Georgia Institute of Technology, and Cassandra Flamboris from the University of Chicago. Thank you, panelists, and welcome.
Thanks, Liz. Thank you.
So a few small housekeeping items before we get started. To minimize background noise, all attendees are in listen-only mode. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to all registered attendees later this week. And finally, of course, there will always be time for questions and answers, so we do encourage you to submit your questions throughout the webinar using the questions box on the right-hand side of the webinar screen. So please feel free to send in your questions at any time. So without any further ado, let's begin. So today, our panelists will focus on three main areas: academic readiness, developing professionalism, and career fit. And what better way to illustrate these important topics than through stories? So first up is the importance of academic readiness. So Carol, why don't you get us started? Can you share with attendees a story about a time when a student you were advising was facing some challenges academically? What did you say to him or her? What was the outcome?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that because that's what we do as advisors all the time. So I'll tell you a story about one young woman who came to Tufts very eager to be a pre-dental student and pursue a dental career. Started off with our extremely rigorous introductory chemistry course and did much less well than she thought she would. Earned a C-. Didn't want to give up, really wanted to be a dentist, so moved on to take Chem 2 and halfway through realized she didn't have the foundation and had to withdraw. So she was certain that her dreams of being a dentist were destroyed by that experience. Fortunately, she was not too embarrassed or too afraid to come in and talk to me because I was able to say to her, you know, this happens to lots of people. It's a chance for you to step back, reevaluate why you want to do this, give yourself some time to develop the skills you need to be successful in the sciences, and then let's sit down and talk again. So that's what she did. She took a little break from science. She got a lot of experience shadowing dentists, came back in her junior year, so yes, she was a little off track, as all students seem to think, but in my mind she wasn't off track. She was now ready. So she went on with her remaining pre-dental requirements, took some extra biology courses. By the time she was preparing for the DAT, she had a strong science foundation, and I'm happy to report that she was successful in gaining admission to dental school. Not on the timeline she originally wanted, but she made it to her goal anyway. So that is what makes it rewarding for me as an advisor.
Great. Thank you so much, Carol. Francisco, do you have perhaps a different perspective or story to share about academic readiness?
Yes, I think my story has a little bit of overlap as Carol's story. I think a little bit that was unique is that the student that I was working with, as she identified that she was struggling with some of the science courses, it was really key for her to really figure out what was going on in making her understand the challenges that she was struggling with science courses. So one of the key things that she worked on was to be able to work with the institution, identify resources where she was able to identify that she was having some issues with some of her study skills and also test-taking skills. And so that's a great time to really students think about and reflect about what are the resources that they have on their campus so they can also then strengthen their preparation academically. This student decided that for her, it was best to stop all her science courses at that point and focus on graduating college first because that was her priority. And that also gave her the opportunity to begin exploring post-bac programs that would allow her to complete those coursework after she graduated. The great thing and the great news is that as she prepared and along the way, she strengthened her GPA during her undergraduate career. That made her a strong candidate for a post-bac program. And then she shared the news with me after she completed her post-bac program and was accepted to dental school that she realized looking back that the plan really was not about just getting into dental school, but also getting through dental school and being prepared academically.
That's a great perspective. Thank you. Something certainly we all, can reflect on in some way or another. And Cassie, any thoughts, any other stories to share with attendees on academic readiness?
I've had students exactly like the two you've already heard about. I think it's important for anyone interested in pursuing a career in dentistry to know is that you do not have to be a science major. It is not unusual for us to work with students who are interested in the social sciences, visual arts, anything beyond the sciences. If you have a particular interest in the sciences, that's fine. But if you don't, you will have to take your prerequisite coursework anyway. And if you start encountering difficulties, it's important, as Francisco said, to use whatever resources you have on campus. On our campus, there are always TAs, and I'm sure on the education as well, that serve as like a bridge between the student and the faculty member. And we have found them to be particularly helpful to our students who are struggling a bit in that particular course. But I think my message, in addition to that, those that you've heard from Carol and Francisco, is to pursue your interests. You'll do better in your coursework. You may not be the science wonk that you think you have to be, but no one said you have to be. You just have to have a basic bottom line interest in not only what you're interested in, but you're going to have to get through the sciences. But you don't have to major in them. I think that's a very important fact for you to remember.
Great. Thank you very much. Great perspective. So next up is developing professionalism. Francisco, let's start with you. Can you tell us about a situation you've encountered in your career that best exemplifies a student that has successfully developed professionalism? And I think first, maybe here is a great opportunity for you to give us a bit of a short definition of what we mean by professionalism.
Yeah, happy to do so. I think professionalism has to be seen in the context of not just the profession and the interaction with patients or your clients, but also thinking about the world of work and thinking about all the soft skills. If you think of communication skills, people skills, presentation skills, all those skills that along the way students gain throughout different projects and programs and activities throughout their undergraduate preparation. Sometimes they're gained once you've actually done an internship, a co-op, or sometimes even just through your volunteer work. You're gaining these professional skills of how you interact with people on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of a little brief description of what professional can be defined as. The story that I'd like to share a little bit about is a student who was looking at, and it kind of overlaps a little bit of what Cassie was sharing earlier, is that it was a student who was really focusing on being a biology major, and at the time wasn't sure if it was going to be the right match for her, but at the same time she wanted to begin exploring that profession of medicine, and she got a job as an assistant in the office of the dental office. And at that point she began to start thinking about the professionalism of the work, so not just the pieces of working with the patients, but also thinking about running a staff, thinking about the dental hygienist and the management of an office. All these professional skills that she gained through the summer really helped her understand not only the value of what the dentist does beyond working with a patient, but also the bigger pieces of running a business. And so when she came back to campus, she switched her major to business because she really felt that those were skills that she wanted to continue to strengthen and felt was a better match. She still was able to incorporate all her pre-dental coursework into her preparation, and along the way really sought out additional opportunities to continue to strengthen her professionalism skills.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Cassie, what are your thoughts on a best approach to develop professionalism?
I think it starts with day-to-day life. I will expand a bit on what Francisco said. You know, it's how you interact with your peers, with those older than you, those younger with you. It's learning to interact on a day-to-day basis in a way that makes people want to be with you. And again, as Francisco said, it's always a good idea to try and shadow some dentists, get different perspectives, perhaps different types of dental offices, an endodontist, a general practitioner, whatever the case may be. But when you're observing them, watch how they interact with patients. I don't know that they really talk too much about anything technical. Instead, they're asking how their day is, maintaining a good relationship with that patient. And I think you can, as I began with, I think it's important to relate that to your everyday life and how you expect people to treat you as well as how you treat others.
Great. Thank you. And Carol, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, there are a couple of elements of professionalism that come to my mind as we talk about it, and I think most dental professionals and admissions deans of dental schools will mention integrity and respect as two characteristics that are sort of part of professionalism. And you can develop those qualities in many aspects of your college career. But I want to bring up briefly one aspect of activity that has become more and more prevalent recently and that has caused concern among the admissions community and among the advising community, and that is the work that students have increasingly been doing in the global health arena. And here's an area where professionalism is very important and where you can develop that notion of respect for others and doing what's appropriate and inappropriate. ADIA has come up with guidelines for students who are involved in global health activities, and we have that on our website so all our students can see it. And the key is to know what your limitations are, to respect the people that you're serving sufficiently to know where your expertise ends and what line you should not be stepping over. The experience you have in a developing country can teach you many things and can be a valuable part of your application, but it shouldn't be about what I got to do. It should be about those patients that you're serving, learning about their lives, their needs, observing the health professionals, dentists, and other providers there in what they're doing, and doing what you can to the limit of your expertise and training and being careful not to step beyond those bounds.
Does that mean then, Carol, that one of my students who was so excited that he had the opportunity when he was in Central America on a program, about a 2-week program, that he got to pull a tooth? Is that what you're referring to?
That is what I am referring to. You can provide some valuable assistance, but that's overstepping the bounds. And I think certainly the respect of the patient is called into question, not to mention safety issues. But I think that raises concerns for all of us about the level of professionalism that you're exhibiting.
Thank you.
I think I'd also like to add that it also, from the admissions perspective, I often hear that does bring into question then the student being able, or the applicant being able to define what is ethically and morally correct based on these decisions. So that does bring into question the student's application of how are they able to negotiate this difficult position that they've been put in to do something that wasn't really part of their training or have any of that experience.
Yep, that's a very good point, and something that, here at ADIA we always are worried when we hear students, talking about this or, getting wind of a story like this. So I think it's critical that, the attendees are hearing that this is not something that they should be doing and it's not professional. Thank you so much. Finally, our last topic for today is the all-important topic of career fit. So Cassie, we're going to get started with you. Can you highlight for our attendees why it's critical to explore many options and fields before making a final decision on a career path?
Well, I think I speak for us all when I say that most of our students enter college expecting to become MDs, allopathic physicians. I mean, that's what they see on television. That has perhaps been the relationship of the longest standing they've had with the health professional. But I think it's crucial that they look at under the entire umbrella of healthcare. I have a student in particular that I'm thinking about who just was determined to head to MD until one seminar or presentation he was at, he had a chance conversation with a maxillofacial surgeon who of course is a dentist, and it opened up his eyes to an entire new world of healthcare. And had he not met this gentleman, chances are he would have perhaps tried to pursue MD or perhaps realized it wasn't for him. So as far as career fit, it is crucial that you not only explore those particular professions that you're interested in, but that you understand how that particular person, in this case a dentist, will interact with other members of the healthcare community. You don't work in a vacuum in any of these professions. And with dentistry, I find that students are always surprised at the scope of practice within the profession. They are excited about the lifestyle that they're able to get. They're excited about the different areas in which they can specialize if they choose. It's important as you are looking at careers that you look beyond the actual day-to-day practice and look at the type of life that you will have as that type of dentist or healthcare practitioner.
That's great advice, Cassie. Thank you. Perfect. So Carol, what would you like attendees to know about the importance of finding the right career fit?
Well, I'm going to share a story that I love as a way to answer that question, but I'll preface it by saying that I feel like I do good work as a pre-health advisor, and I know all my colleagues feel the same way, but we're not naive enough to think that students just listen to what we tell them. You kind of have to find it for yourself. So this is a story about one of my students who was pre-med from the get-go, just like Cassie talked about, and finished the third year here at Tufts and was all set, going to be applying to med school, going to be deciding when to take the MCAT. Went to a family picnic in the summer. I don't know how the conversation came up, and his uncle said, you know, I have a dentist that lives down the street from me. You should probably talk to him. And the student really didn't want to, but didn't want to be rude to his uncle, so he said, sure, I'll talk to him. Had a conversation with this guy. Next thing you know, the dentist invites him to come and observe in his office. He goes in 2 days, and the next thing I know, I get an email. Guess what? I found the perfect profession for me. I could have been talking about all the pluses of dentistry, as Cassie pointed out, for years to this student. I don't think it could have had that same kind of impact that those 2 visits had. And so I think what we as advisors try to do a lot is say, go out there, get exposure, talk to people who do this work, and then find out for yourself. It's much too demanding a profession. It's much too long a haul to pursue a health profession that you may wind up 5 years down the road or 10 years not finding it's a good fit because you didn't think long and hard from the beginning about what's going to work best for you. So fit is critical, and no better way to find out if you fit than to go to that office and see.
Right. Great advice, Carol. Thank you. And finally, to close out our conversation about career fit, Francisco, we'd love to hear your perspective.
I think, you know, students really looking at different ways of exploring. Sometimes it is through shadowing, sometimes it's happenstance. Sometimes there's very unique programs, and the story that I wanted to share was a little bit of a friend of mine who is a dentist, and she shared her experience of being part of the summer medical and dental education program. And she really was focused on, you know, definitely working with underrepresented populations and underserved areas. And along the way, she realized that in her community there was a lack of physicians, and so because of that piece, that was her motivation to go into medical school. But through her involvement in this program, she realized that as she explored medical school, she also was introduced to the career of dentistry. And she shared with me about the experience, the moment where she actually was shadowing a dentist in through that program, and was able to see the reality that the individual's health is also connected to their oral health. So again, she saw that link of how she can have that impact on a person's life just like a physician would, but that the oral health was just as important. Because of that experience, and she came back and realized in her own community there was also a lack of diversity within the dental community in her neighborhoods and in her area. And so felt that she could continue to pursue her passions to work with underserved areas, but now through as a dentist be able to have an impact, because she also realized that she connected her passion of wanting to work with children and eventually became a pediatrician dentist as well. So again, it really is looking at what are your strengths and your passions, how do you connect that with how you want to have an impact on people's lives, and seeing how dentistry is part of the bigger picture of healthcare, and being able to put together those experiences to confirm that it's a good fit for you.
Great. What a great story. Thank you so much. Well, I think we've covered the three areas, I think, pretty well. I hope well. One final thing before we head over to questions, just, if the panelists want to share any last, words of wisdom, with any of our attendees that are listening in. Carol, why don't we start with you?
Well, as I was listening to all of our conversations, two things just popped into my mind about the dental profession that I hadn't been thinking about before. And one is that relationship piece. Francisco alluded to it when he was talking about his dentist volunteering in the office. And all of a sudden, I'm reminded of the fact that my 3 children are grown, and they still come home to go to our family dentist that we have been going to for decades. And that relationship is so key to what motivates many students to go into the health professions, and dentistry still retains that in a way that a lot of the other health professions don't. So that popped into my mind. And the other piece that we haven't really alluded to much, but it's the tactile aspect of dentistry, wanting and enjoying working with your hands, and you know that because you're a knitter, or you're a wood carver, or you're still playing with Legos even though you're in your 20s, or whatever. You enjoy that aspect of activity, and you see that that can be incorporated into dentistry. So they just popped into my mind as we were talking. I wanted to share them.
It's a great thought about the family dentist. I certainly, I lived abroad for a few years, and I was very hesitant to go to a new dentist because I was very fond of my family dentist, but I did go. Cassie, how about you? Any final words of wisdom to share?
Yes, a good way to explore is a program called Summer Medical and Dental Education Program. Francisco can probably tell us a bit more about it. It is targeted towards underserved populations to introduce those who might otherwise not have an opportunity to explore dentistry in particular. I think these are wonderful programs. They are at schools that provide wonderful support to their participants. I would urge you all to speak with your health professions advisor if you have one on campus. If not, at ADEA, I'm sure on their website you can find information about these programs. Explore summer opportunities while you're still an undergraduate. Oftentimes they come with stipends that will help pay for this opportunity, but I would strongly urge you to look for something that will help you explore more in depth. And in addition, they will include quite a bit about the curriculum, which gives you some idea of what you'll be getting into.
Great. Thank you so much. And Francisco, any last thoughts and words of wisdom to share with our attendees?
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of been an underlying theme along the way through today's conversation is to really recognize that once you're in college and beyond, you have your own journey. You have your own experiences and you have your own time, and things have shifted and changed from, K through 12 where everybody does everything the same. And so being open to understanding that this is now your journey and that you can take responsibility for it, and you don't have to do everything as everybody else around you is doing it, but begin to work closely with your advisor in a way to put together your plan. So sometimes it might take additional time to strengthen a GPA, to retake the DAT, to gain more clinical exposure, whatever it may be. But the reality is that now it's your plan and don't have to worry about fitting a specific timeline like everybody else. So my words are encouragement of thinking about putting together a plan that works for you and that accommodates all the things that you want to experience before you go on to your professional career, and then taking advantage of all the opportunities around you.
Great piece of advice. Thank you. Well, I want to just take one quick second to thank you all panelists for your wisdom and expertise. It's now time for some Q&A, and we already have many good questions in the queue. I actually have a question that I think I'll get us started. It's something that we've actually all talked about, and a question that I know other people have asked me. What about if I don't have a pre-health advisor? So what about if one of the attendees are on the line here and listening in, and they aren't lucky enough to have a pre-health advisor at their disposal? What are the resources available to them, or what would you suggest would be the first step for them to to find somebody who can advise them in that capacity, even if the title isn't, health professional advisor. Carol, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. There are many different kinds of titles and staff people at universities that can be helpful to you if you're interested in pursuing a dental career. One aspect of preparing for dentistry, obviously, is taking courses and doing well in those courses. So there are academic advisors at every college and university. They may not know what's on the DAT, but they can help you figure out how to do well in chemistry, which sequence of courses is the most sensible sequence for you. By the time you're in a major, you've got an advisor in your major who's a faculty member who also can be helping you grow academically. There are dentists everywhere. And my experience is that many dentists are open to students coming in and shadowing them. So even if you don't have a pre-dental advisor who can connect you with dentists, you have your own. Probably. You may have an orthodontist, your parents may go to dentists. Start with those people and start with dentists in practice around your college or university and see if you can get the sort of professional component, career component. You also have a career office in your college or university of some sort, so there could be somebody in that office. And lastly, if you really want focused pre-health advising, and there is no person at your school designated to do that, NAAHP, the National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions, has a service called Find an Advisor. So you can log into that website, go to Find an Advisor, post a question, and one of the volunteer advisors will be in contact with you and can give you specific information.
Thank you. It's a great resource and want to make sure everyone on the webinar knew about it. So thank you. Francisco or Cassie, any further thoughts on that?
I'm a strong advocate of using your alumni associations as well. They, more than anyone, understand the work you're going through, not only academically, but what life on your campus is like. And if you can look, if you have access to your alumni association or an alumni directory, I would look to see if you have any dentists in and among them and contact them. See if they're able to spend some time with you. I will also reinforce what Carol said, the Find an Advisor aspect of the NAAHP.org website has been a big help to students who just can't find anyone on their campus or in their community to give them some help.
Great, thanks. And Francisco, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would also just advocate for looking at identifying mentors in your community who are individuals that can help guide you and help you make decisions along the way. So a dentist could be a mentor, a faculty member could be a mentor. So think about somebody that you can go to and have this continued conversation. So it's not just about collecting information, but helping you make good decisions along the way. I also would encourage students to explore student organizations. Sometimes it might be, while there might not be an advisor on campus, there might be a student organization that already has put together some resources and opportunities for you to be involved as well. And then also reach out to different dental schools themselves and connect with admissions officers, because again, those individuals will be able to explain some of the basics of the admissions process so that you understand what things should be in place. So again, identifying the multitude of resources that may be around you while there might not be someone on your campus.
That's great. And ADIA events, of course.
I was just going to add, we forgot to mention the source of information that advisors use so that we know what to say to our students, and that's ADIA. The publications and the website has phenomenal information that I pull the book off my shelf all the time. I go to the website all the time when I have a student in my office. So those are great resources.
I'm just kidding, but thank you. So we have what I think is an actually really interesting question. So, I'll throw it to all of you. So will dental school admissions committees take into consideration the reputation of the school you graduated from? I think that's a really interesting question. I don't know, Cassie, I might start with you. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm fortunate to work at a school that is very well known. It is known for its rigor. It is known because it's highly ranked. And inevitably a student is going to say to me, well, doesn't that give me an edge? No, not really. You are ranked just like every other student is. Does an A from my campus mean more than an A from another campus? No, because it's the amount of work you put into it. It's an excellent question. It is one that we get so very often. But also, please keep in mind that your preparation goes far beyond academics. Certainly that's a component, and your DAT scores, and it's not only a number with your GPA, but it's the difficult course combinations perhaps, or how many courses you've taken during a quarter or a semester. But beyond that, you're going to be judged on your contributions and engagement on your campus and in your community. You're going to be judged by the evidence you are able to provide that you know what dentistry is about and that you have sought opportunity to explore this. So if you look at your preparation over all three of these areas, your academic, your personal, and your career preparation, you will see that if your grades aren't exactly as high as you hope, but well within range of letting a dental school know that you can manage their curriculum, if you look at the other sources of your preparation, you may in fact be an outstanding applicant.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to disagree with Cassie in one tiny way.
That's okay.
I do think that the selectivity and prestige, if you want to call it that, of your institution plays some role in dental admissions, but the danger of that, and I think that's why, Cassie, you answered the way you did, the danger is thinking that if you don't go to a quote-unquote top school, you'll never get into dentistry, or because you went to a quote-unquote top school, that automatically you're going to get in. And those are two misconceptions, and I don't want to support them in any way. But certainly the rigor of your curriculum is one of the variables, as Cassie said, that a typical dental school admissions office is going to take into consideration, and it's going to play a role, but it's only one piece of a much larger pie that's considered.
Right, thank you.
And what I will say is, typically when we hear that, it's a grade that really is not acceptable no matter where they go.
Oh, true.
And they think because of the prestige of the institution and the rigor that, gee, they will accept that grade, when no, in fact, they won't. You must be able to provide evidence that you can handle the curriculum at the school to which you've applied or the schools to which you're applying.
Very, very true. And Francisco, any thoughts?
No, I think that they've covered, both my colleagues have covered great information about the bigger picture of what the admissions process is beyond just the institution, the academic side.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Another question, I also think it's a pretty good question, probably a common question for you three. How do schools perceive a non-traditional student, and what are some tips you can provide? Francisco, how about we start with you?
I think it kind of connects to what I mentioned earlier of everybody having their own journey. I think non-traditional students tend to be more of a norm now than it was 10, 20 years ago, where the tradition was to go straight from undergrad to a professional program. And the other piece that I need to think about is that when you become a non-traditional student, you're actually taking the opportunity to step outside and gain additional experiences or opportunities. So if you take time to work, if you take time to do additional coursework or degrees or anything like that, it's enhancing your application to a certain degree. It might be an opportunity to have more time to strengthen your application, but you're adding to the picture of who you are and those experiences. So when we talk about not just academic strength, but also, again, professionalism and career fit, these are all the pieces that, being a non-traditional student, you have more time to continue to strengthen those areas of your application and show that you bring something unique and different to the picture, because not everybody needs to be exactly the same.
Right. Great. Great. Carol, any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I smiled when I heard that question because I have a post-bac program and I love working with non-traditional students. But like Francisco said, not every traditional student is exactly the same. Not every non-traditional student is exactly the same. I think the bottom line is you shouldn't be worried because you're a non-traditional student, you haven't taken the traditional path, because the reality is I think that pretty soon those terms are going to be flipped. We certainly at Tufts have more students going on to their professional study after they've taken some time between college and professional study. More often, that student has had broader experiences, has had a richer array of exposure to dentistry, is more self-aware. It's not automatic. It doesn't happen just with 2 more chronological years, but often that applicant can bring more to the application process than a younger student, and certainly someone who's non-traditional because they had a slow start, like the student I talked about earlier in my academic story. By being non-traditional, that student's a stronger applicant because she gave herself the time to build a strong academic and non-academic aspect of her application.
Great, thank you. Cassie, any thoughts?
Yes, in fact, what is traditional? What is non-traditional? We don't use the phrase non-traditional anymore because, at least if on our campus, what is considered non-traditional has been the norm for so very many years. I think you each set your own tradition and you each find your own pathway, whatever timeline it is, whatever gets you to your goal. As Carol alluded to, I think these are phrases that are certainly on their way out and are gone in many instances.
Great, thank you. I think you're right. So let's shift a little bit. We've had a couple of questions around, volunteer work, a couple of specific questions, but maybe I think we address it more broadly. So if you had a student walk into your office and ask about what type of volunteer work they should be focusing on, should it all be health career related? Should it all be dentistry related? What kind of, 1 or 2 pieces of advice you would share with them? Carol, why don't we start with you?
Well, I think you want to try and develop 2 things through your volunteer or service work. One is certainly some clearer picture of what it means to be a dentist. And so that volunteer work has to put you into some setting or settings that allows you to observe dentists in action. It might be a private office with 1 or 2 general practitioners. It might be a very large group practice with a lot of specialists. It might be a clinic run by a dental school near you. It might be a soup kitchen that has health care offered 1 evening a week and a dentist comes in, whatever the settings are, that you're actually able to become more informed about the profession of dentistry. That said, there's a whole variety of qualities and characteristics that are going to be important to you as a future dentist, and by the way, that admissions committees are going to be trying to evaluate. And those are those interpersonal skills that you can develop in a lot of volunteer settings, not necessarily health-related, where you're providing some sort of service to people in need, whether it's tutoring or helping non-English speakers filling out tax forms or applying for health insurance or whatever. I'm sure your campuses, just like our campuses, have many, many student groups that try to provide service to those in need, and those are very valuable experiences as well.
Great, thanks. Cassie, any thoughts?
I will just echo what Carol says. I mean, certainly it's important that you provide evidence that you know what dentistry is about, but you could see, I mean, I answer this question so often. Do you have to have experience in a dental office? Well, I think it's a yes. Personally, I think you should. But that doesn't mean that the other activities and experiences you've had while you're in college don't mean anything. In fact, as Carol said again, the characteristics, the attributes, the values you acquire through these activities and experiences will only make you a better dentist, a better practitioner. They will make you more comfortable with your patients, and in turn your patients will be more comfortable with them. I mean, a simple test for yourselves is to ask yourselves if you know what the difference between empathy and sympathy is, and how do you acquire these characteristics. So it's crucial that you understand what life is about, and you get that through your own experiences.
Great. Thank you. Francisco, any thoughts?
I think, be echoing a lot of the similar comments in the sense that, how have you shown that you've learned about the world of dentistry? So, not just the role of the dentist, but the different environments that they are in. And so in your application, does it show that you've really taken time to learn about that? How have you shown that you have learned and you're passionate about service to others? And so again, not just, in the clinical setting, but also in volunteer opportunities in the community. I think also I typically tend to encourage students to think outside the box and think about the places where there's a bigger need. We tend to go abroad and think about a third world country to go do service as a place to show this, but the reality is that there's a lot of communities in our own country that is lacking the resources, the healthcare, the access to a lot of these services. And so when you find organizations that are committed to addressing those population needs, you're able to then have often more time of impact and also more opportunities to be engaged and really see the realities of what will be out there in the real world.
Great. Thank you so much. We've had a couple questions come in around, which is to be expected, of course, about being waitlisted or, people feeling that their grades aren't as high as they'd like them to be. And so I think maybe instead of doing specific questions, maybe more generally, for individuals that maybe have been waitlisted, what are and they walked into your office, what would be one or two pieces of advice you would share with them? Cassie, why don't we start with you?
Well, and this is the time of year where that's going to be happening. It's not the easiest position to be in, but as I tell my students, the only thing I don't like is an outright rejection. To me, a wait list says that a school is very interested in you, but they're still working on putting the optimum class they want together. So patience is a virtue in this case. You don't want to inundate them with daily emails saying, I'm very interested in your school. On the other hand, you do want them to know that you are remaining interested and would be more than happy to take a seat in their class. So perhaps once a month, you might want to update them if you've done anything since your last communication with the school. If you've graduated, if you've gotten grades, or if you simply want to re-express your interest in their school. I think that's an important thing to remember. But again, at this time of the year, it's a difficult time. We understand that. We all want to know right away what's going to happen. But unfortunately, that isn't the case in admissions in many instances.
Thank you. Francisco, any thoughts?
I would really spend time learning about the institutions that you're waitlisted at, because it really could be that there's a missing piece, that they haven't really made the connection about why you're a strong candidate for their institution. And so looking at your application, and as Kathy mentioned, when you share that interest, being able to show how you have a good fit for their program. So providing that information of additional things that you've done, but also continue to show where you think you're a good match for the institution. I think those are key. Another key element that I would add.
Great. And Carol, any thoughts?
So if we're focusing specifically on waitlisted students, not the broader category of people who haven't been admitted. Obviously, the waitlisted students are just an inch away, and waitlists do move, like Cassie said. It's not a rejection. But at the same time you're waiting, if you have more than one waitlist, you need to be thinking through what action you're going to take quickly if that spot opens up. If you are serious about that school, are you starting to think about, well, what plans do I have to put in place if I get off the wait list? And at a certain point, if it gets into the summer, you might be saying, I may not need to do this yet, but I don't want to be a late applicant the next time around, so it might make sense, and I would talk with your advisor first, to initiate a new application even while you're still on a wait list. Now, I do not like to tell students who were turned down to automatically reapply if they haven't had any interviews, but if a student's on a wait list, that student clearly is a strong candidate. So it might make sense to even think about initiating a new application while you're waiting for another one to come through.
Great, thank you. So, and I'm not sure if somebody here has more knowledge about this than others, but it's a question, is there any advice for a Canadian applicant who's interested in an American dental school or American dental schools? I don't know if anyone has, can speak to that. Francisco, any personal experience with that?
I think it's a matter of really learning which schools are open to accepting either international students or students that are seen that do see Canada as someone that they would consider. So definitely looking at different institutions closer to Canada that may be more open to that. And then also really be thinking about what are going to be any unique challenges that may come up with their visa as far as being an eligible student. So there's a lot of questions that come up when you're considering international students here in the States and your eligibility to be competitive at specific programs. We do see that dental schools tend to have a little bit more flexibility compared to medical schools in certain areas, and so it really is more about doing your work, about researching schools and finding which ones are those schools that you might consider.
Great, thank you. Cassie or Carol, any thoughts?
Another thing to think about is whether you've attended an American undergraduate institution for college or if you've attended college in Canada. Sometimes if you've attended a Canadian college, you might have to have your grades assessed to make sure they fit into what we or the dental schools into the format they use, into the grading system.
Great. Carol, anything to add there?
Just to add to what Francisco said, ADIA does a great job of giving us data on a whole variety of factors, and one of them is, does this dental school admit Canadian students?
Right.
So you can easily get a subset of dental schools on a list that will help you begin your research into particular schools.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. So we've gotten some questions around personal statement, which is not surprising, of course. So any, maybe one or two tips that you advise your students, each year about what they should include in their personal statement to really make it successful and, ensure that they're standing out from their very competitive competition. Francisco, why don't we start with you?
I would really focus on key moments that help you test why you want to be a dentist, and second, about how you learn about that world of dentistry. If you have that focus of what was your unique experiences and really focus on that, you won't have a lot of space to cover every little detail of all the different things that you've done. So really focus on the key ones that you feel the strongest about. Reflect on that. Talk about how that impacted your decision making.
Great. Carol?
Well, I always have a lot of things to say to my students about the content of the essay, but I think I want to focus on something different right now. Think about your reader. Think about the fact that somebody is sitting down and reading many, many of these. And I'm not suggesting you do that so that you come up with some really flashy, eye-catching first sentence that's going to be wowie. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a statement that is well-written, clearly written, fairly concise, fairly straightforward. You're not going for a Pulitzer Prize here, but you are going for a well-crafted statement that is going to make a reader, that's going to allow a reader to get through it quickly and have at the end of reading it a good sense of who you are and why you're motivated for dentistry. So try after you're finished your writing to put yourself in the reader's shoes.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Cassie?
As luck would have it, I had a personal statement review this morning, and he's a Canadian.
Ah.
Yeah. But the way I tell, you're going to have to provide quite a bit of information in your application. You're going to tell them about your activities and experiences. You're going to delineate your academic success. But I always say that the personal statement is your one opportunity to speak to the committee, to let your passion for this profession come through. You don't want to tell them about every one of your activities and how it contributed. First of all, they can see that in another section in your application. Instead, this is the one space where you have the opportunity to pull it all together for them and tell them where this motivation comes from. It may be from one of your experiences. It may be from an experience that one of your relatives has gone through. But let that passion come through. And as Carol said, and Francisco alluded to, it's important that they get the essence of why this is so important to you. It's less important for them to know exactly what you've done. As I said, they're going to know that from another section of your application. But speak to them in a way that tries to convince them that you are the one that they want. Because as Carol said, this might be the 20th that they've read that night, and you don't want a reiteration of something that they're going to see elsewhere in your application.
Great. Thank you very much. Another kind of major theme in the questions is gap year. You know, one person said, I'm taking a gap year. How do dental schools look at this gap year? I'm sure you've encountered that several times over the courses of your careers. And so maybe, you know, touch upon, you know, what some of the advice you share with students that are planning on a gap year. Francisco, we can start with you.
The gap year means that you're just added additional time, and that we talked a little bit about earlier. That shows that you've chosen to take additional time to strengthen your application, and that piece will always be reflected in how they look at your application. What is it that you gained from that additional time to strengthen your application? How can you address what you did during that time? What did you benefit? How did you grow and learn through that additional time? So thinking about yourself as not as a gap year being a negative experience or a bad thing to have on your application, but rather what were the things that you felt were critical in strengthening your application, and being able to address that, not just in the application process, potentially in your personal statement, but also maybe something that comes up during an interview as well.
Thank you. Cassie, any thoughts?
It's important that you follow through on what you're interested in. Again, to reiterate what Francisco says, go to your own experiences, dig deep, find out what it is that you're trying to let them know about.
Yeah, fair enough.
How's that?
That's great. And Carol, how about you?
I am so glad that somebody asked this question.
Okay, good.
Because all my tough students know that I'm on a crusade, and now I have an opportunity to ask all of you to join me on my crusade, which is to get rid of that phrase gap year. We're going to start calling it growth year. Can you join me with that? Because that's what it is. How you grow, where you grow is up to you. You need to, go with your passions. I do tell my students that I'm not fond of hearing that they're going to follow the surf around the world for a year, but just about anything else would be fine if they're going to grow and learn about themselves, about their world, about their motivation for dentistry. That can only be a positive on their application.
Carol, I'm a step ahead of you. I have been calling it a gift year. And they only know that it's a gift when they come back after that time and say to me, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I You'll also hear it in glide year. Whatever your phrase, seize the opportunity and take advantage of it.
Great. That's great. Thank you. I like the gift or growth year. I think that's something that we at ADIA can support here. So we're on that mission.
Using the term bridge year now.
Yeah, I like it.
And the gap just has this empty feeling.
Yeah.
The visual you get, is this hole. That's not what it is at all.
Right, I agree. Well, I think we have time for just one more question, and it's kind of in the same theme, and this is kind of on the interview end. So, what the basic question is, what can we, as a pre-dental student applying to dental school, expect in the interviews? I guess it's a hard question to answer. You're not in the interview yourself, of course, but maybe some, share with the attendees some tips and guidance you would give them when they're preparing for those interviews. Carol, why don't we start with you?
Well, I guess the overriding thing I would say is expect a positive experience. You're not going in there and going to be put on a firing line and somebody is going to be, sort of on the attack. Dental schools are interested in getting to know you. You are their not only potential students, they're potential colleagues. Are you someone that they'd want to work with? Are you someone that they think would be good with patients? So that's all about how you're going to interact in a positive, enthusiastic, comfortable manner. So I think you go in saying, I made the big cut. I was invited for an interview. Not that you want to be cocky, but you should feel positive about who you are and confident in who you are, and just be prepared to have a comfortable conversation where you honestly talk about your experiences and your motivation.
Thank you. That's great advice. Francisco, any thoughts on that?
The interview is a two-way street. The way that I would encourage students to think about it is not only are you interviewing for them to see if you're a good fit, but you're also interviewing them and getting a sense if that institution is going to be a good match for you. And so thinking about the interview process as a two-way street. The other component is it's also a chance for admissions committees to check to see, do you match who you presented yourself as on paper or an application? So when we talked about the personal statement, they gain a picture of who you are. Now in person, do you match that picture as well? And then third, the other piece too is that it really is a time where they get a chance to really see your communication skills, your people skills, your professional skills. And so are you aware that you were attending a professional interview? Did you dress appropriately? Did you prepare yourself to articulate more about your passions, your strengths, and your interests? And then also be able to, again, answer the questions about what's your passion for this profession?
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, any thoughts on that, Cassie?
Yes, listen, when someone comes and tells me they've gotten an interview, I say, great, because that school is saying, you really fit our profile. We want to meet with you to find out more about you. So as Carol said, you have already passed the test. You are what they would want. But it's that personal interview that may put it over the edge. I'll be a little more practical. I will say make sure that when you go for your interview, you have reviewed everything that you've sent to them. They might be asking you questions, and you certainly want them to know that you remember what you wrote. You want to do your research on the school. What is important to them? Are they vested in community medicine? Are they vested in taking care of the community around them? Are they vested in research and dentistry? Find out what that school is really invested in. See if you can stay with a student or get there the night before, get a feel for the school. Be practical about it in a way. Prepare yourself well. And something very simple, make sure you wear something you're comfortable in. You wear shoes that you can walk around in all day. You feel good about yourself. You might, as I said, want to get there the night before. Find the building ahead of time. Take care of what is in your control, because it's inevitable that at times you're going to feel that you are not controlling anything. But in fact, you are. You are there because they want to meet you. They're excited to meet you. They wouldn't give you an interview slot, which are very few and far between, if they didn't.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. I just want to take one more opportunity to thank all three of our panelists. You guys were exceptional, and I think the attendees will have learned a great deal. I just am obviously going to put in a plug for ADIA again. We have a virtual fair coming up on June 9th, the ADIA Predental Student Virtual Fair. So please check out the event, June 9th, 11 to 9 p.m. And you can register on the ADIA Go Dental events page. So, please make sure you take that opportunity to do it. It's good timing since, remember, ADIA AdSAS opens June 1, not before. So you can't get in there before June 1. We get a lot of questions about that. So, again, I want to thank everyone for their time and attention today. Again, one more big shout out and thank you to our panelists. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Good luck to everyone.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.